Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 68 of Be With Me. Today's title is Jesus is Touchable. And I talked before a couple days ago, maybe 10 days or so ago, about the wounds in Jesus' hands and side. Is there anybody who is not going to put your finger in those holes in heaven? And I think the answer is no. I think we're all going to get to do that. So here's how we get there today. The guys from the road to Emmaus are just back. It might be a guy and a girl. And they find the 11 and those who are gathered together in Jerusalem. And I thought the guys from Emmaus said this, but I think it's actually the guys from the 11. They say when the two Emmaus people walk in the door, the Lord has risen indeed and has appeared to Simon. So they say the Lord has risen indeed. And then the Emmaus guys told them what had happened on the road and how he was known to them in the breaking of the bread up in Emmaus. So they hightail it back to Jerusalem, and here's what happened. Okay, so this is in Luke 24, and I'm going to start in verse 36. And the title of this is Jesus Appears to His Disciples. No kidding. As they were talking about these things, so the Emmaus 2 people and the Jerusalem 11 plus others gathered together, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be to you, peace to you." But they were startled and frightened and thought they saw a spirit. And he said to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do doubts arise in your hearts? See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Touch me and see. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still disbelieved for joy and were marveling, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate before them. All right. So remember, Jesus had been sequentially appearing to people, the women at the tomb, then to Mary Magdalene, then to the people at Emmaus, one of them being a guy, Cleopas. Then we find that he's appeared to Peter. John and Peter have had a report of the empty tomb. We find that people are clinging and grabbing his feet and misidentifying him and finally identifying him and calling him sweet names. And the Emmaus people had their hearts burning, and Jesus was charging them to go tell people. And so now we have this first contact. And when Jesus suddenly appears to them, so there's some sort of a surprise thing going on, his words are peace to you, shalom. So that means more than just absence of conflict. It's a positive thing. It's a blessing. It strongly hints at a right relationship with God. So this enmity that we had with God is now friendship and brotherhood and family. It's someone that may have been far off and now is near. So it's a very pregnant thing that he says when he says peace to you. But then, so these are the same people that just said to the Emmaus guys, he is risen indeed. But they were startled. So 5 things: startled, frightened, misidentifying, thought they saw a spirit. And then Jesus says, you're troubled, and why do doubts arise in your heart? So 5 things: startling, frightening, thought they saw a spirit, troubled, and doubting in their heart. These are people that just said that Jesus was risen. And so my first read through this, I said, these guys are just plagued with persistent unbelief. And it's really not quite true. That's too strong of a statement, I think. This doubting, I just think this whole belief thing is messy. And the scripture tells you that it's sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. And I mean, God can take this. And then he says, this is my favorite part from today. He says, let's examine the evidence. And he uses all 5 senses. I just love this. He says, see my hands and feet, and then touch my hands and touch me and see. And he's already talking, so he has 5 senses. Sight, he's got that. Hearing, he's got that. Touch, he's got that. And then I think the broiled fish adds taste and smell. So he eats the fish, he tastes the fish, and here's where I'm getting the smell part. Is the tasting is 80% smell, they say, for those of you who are food connoisseurs or wine drinkers. So he uses all 5 sentences. Jesus is a walking piece of evidence here about the resurrection. And this thing about being able to appear and disappear, Jesus states, he says, I am of flesh and bones, which is interesting, but these bones and flesh seem to be able to surprise people and also lead people sometimes to misidentify him. But then it says, verse 41, and while they're getting to this point of belief, happy belief here, and while they still disbelieved for joy, and I don't know exactly what that means, but I think their attitude is better. They're joyful and they're marveling, but they're still struggling with disbelief. It's the 6th thing. So here's my conclusions for today. Number 1, I think the arc of belief is how I'm poetically describing it, is messy. And probably if we drew out or described your pattern of belief or your story, your faith journey, it probably would be messy and probably would be requiring different pieces of evidence to get to like a real solid faith. And it's worth it. In the end, you get peace with God, which is awesome. It's the shalom, this positive blessing, this positive right relationship. And so what does Jesus give us? He gives us all 5 senses, seeing, hearing, and tasting, and smelling, and touching, to help believe. And I think that's going to continue into heaven. And you bet you, I think he's going to do the same thing for us. He's going to show us his hands and feet and say, touch me. I think we're going to be lined up doing this in heaven. I think it's going to be a blast. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.